The desert wind carried with it the smell of dust, sweat, and the faintest trace of rain that would never come, a cruel whisper from the skies that seemed to mock the land below, and the poor rancher named Elias Thornton knew that today, like so many days before, would be hard, for the sun hung low and merciless above the mesas, and his cattle, leaner than he'd ever seen them, scattered toward the dry creek bed in search of water that wasn't there, and so he pressed onward, spurs jangling lightly against the ribs of his tired horse, not knowing that before night fell he would stumble upon something that would change not only his own fate but the fate of 2 nations, for hidden deep in the jagged hills was a cave, and within that cave lay a secret bound in iron, a secret that cried out in silence to be freed. Elias was not a man of riches, nor of reputation, but rather of stubborn grit, the kind of man who kept moving forward because turning back was never an option, and though the years had carved lines into his face and hardship had hardened his spirit, he carried in his chest a heart that had not yet been fully beaten down by the cruelty of the frontier. Still, as he rode through the canyons, he felt the weight of solitude heavier than the rifle slung across his back, for widowed and childless, he had little to hold on to but the land itself, and the land gave him little in return. The day grew hotter, and as Elias pushed deeper into a canyon where his cattle had strayed, he noticed a peculiar silence, for even the cicadas seemed hushed, and the sound of his horse's hooves against stone echoed unnaturally loud, and it was then he saw the dark hollow ahead, a cave mouth hidden between 2 jagged boulders like a secret door carved into the earth, and though he had ridden past this way before, he had never noticed it, as if the canyon itself had conspired to keep it hidden. Until this very moment. Curiosity tugged at him, though caution whispered otherwise, for the Apache were known to use caves for shelter or for sacred rites, and a man stumbling upon such places uninvited often did not leave alive, yet something compelled him forward, a strange heaviness in the air that drew him closer. He dismounted, tied his horse loosely to a scrub of mesquite, and approached the cave, his boots crunching softly over gravel, his hand resting near the worn handle of his revolver, not out of aggression but of instinct born from too many years of surviving in a land where danger never announced itself until it was too late. The air inside the cave was cooler, carrying with it the damp smell of stone and something else, iron, rust, and the faint stench of old blood, and as his eyes adjusted to the dim, Elias felt his heart begin to pound, for he heard it before he saw it, a low rasping breath that did not belong to him, and then, deeper still, the faintest sound of chains rattling, not like the careless jingle of loose metal, but the strained, deliberate rattle of something, someone, moving against bonds. His first thought was that perhaps it was a trap, that outlaws or raiders had chosen this place to lure a wanderer in, but then the sound came again, louder, more desperate, and against all reason, he moved further in. The light from the cave mouth dwindled, so Elias struck a match from his vest pocket, the tiny flame sputtering as it cast long shadows against the walls, and that was when he saw them, 2 figures slumped against the far wall, enormous in size, their frames larger than any man he had ever laid eyes upon, their long black hair tangled and matted with dirt, their wrists bound high against the rock by cruel iron chains that bit into raw flesh, their ankles shackled so tight that swollen skin had grown around the steel. At first, Elias thought his eyes deceived him, for these were women, but not ordinary women, no. These were giants, their shoulders broad, their limbs thick with the kind of strength that could topple a steer, yet their faces, though marked by suffering, bore the unmistakable features of Apache blood, proud high cheekbones, deep dark eyes that even in weariness burned with unyielding fire. For a long moment Elias simply stood frozen, the match burning down toward his fingers, his mind struggling to make sense of what he saw, for in all his years he had heard tales of giant warriors, of ancient bloodlines born of the earth itself, but never had he believed such stories to be true, and now here they were, flesh and bone, 2 sisters by the look of them, chained like animals in the cold dark. The taller of the 2 stirred, lifting her head with effort, and her gaze locked onto his, not with fear but with something heavier, an accusation, a demand, as if asking why he stood there watching instead of acting, and the second, weaker, let out a low groan that echoed through the cave like thunder muffled by stone. Elias's chest tightened. These were not captives of their own people, he realized, but prisoners of cruelty, bound by hands that sought to break their spirit, and though every instinct told him to turn back, to leave this place and pretend he had never seen it, another voice, stronger and truer, told him he could not walk away, for if he did, their blood would be on his hands as surely as the iron that bound them. He dropped the burnt-out match, let the darkness close in, then lit another, stepping closer, his voice rough with disuse as he spoke words that felt too small in the cavern's vast silence. "Who did this to you?" he asked, though he knew they might not answer, and indeed, neither spoke, but the taller sister's eyes, fierce and unyielding, shifted toward the chains and then back to him, a silent command as clear as any spoken tongue. Elias's throat went dry. To free them was madness, he knew it. Whoever had chained these women would not forgive the theft, and to unleash them might mean bringing wrath upon his own head, for giants of flesh and blood were no tame creatures, and yet, as the silence deepened and the weight of their suffering pressed against him, Elias felt something stir within him, a resolve he had not felt in years. The same raw defiance that had once driven him to carve a living out of barren land, to fight back against drought and storm, to keep breathing when the world seemed set on grinding him into dust, and so he whispered to himself more than to them, "Damn the consequences," and reached for the hatchet strapped to his saddle roll.